The year is 2025. You have a dream in your heart, let's say writing Umbrella Academy fanfiction. And then you look around and see that a robot can literally do it 100 times faster than you, and honestly, it's a bit more coherent. What now? And yeah, this is another video talking about AI, creativity, and expertise. So I was on Reddit recently, and I'm back on Reddit, by the way, and I saw a comment on a post about ChatGPT, which was basically asking what people against ChatGPT expect someone whose creativity isn't supported by modern capitalist systems to do if they want to make good work. And that got me thinking, why are we so obsessed with making good things? So I have never been a creative. I mean, I've done plenty of creative things. I sang in choir growing up. I embroider, I knit badly, and I'm comfortable enough in the kitchen to make my own meals. But before I started this YouTube channel, I had never really made something that was entirely mine from start to finish without a recipe or a formula or a Pinterest board of inspiration that I loosely change to make my own. And it's awesome. It is so cool to think of something, write down thoughts, and then have 25 to 2,000 people watch me talk about it. It's kind of addictive, actually. But one thing I've learned in the 2 months or so that I've been doing this is that making good, interesting content that people actually want to watch is kind of hard. Like, in a good way, the cool part of doing this is that I'm just kind of trying out things that seem fun to make, and I'm learning something in every step of the process. And maybe you can see where I'm going with this, but I feel like when you use something like ChatGPT to, say, write the story that's trapped in your head, or make the art that you want to see, or, write the script for the YouTube video that you want to make, it seems like you lose the interesting, unpredictable part of creativity, which is the execution. And yes, those examples that I gave aren't terrible things. And if you're like a DM and you want to make cool pictures of the monster in your homebrew campaign before your next session, I understand not wanting to learn all of art for something like that. And I also can't and wouldn't stop you from using ChatGPT for just personal little projects. But if, say, you wanted to be an artist or a YouTuber or a writer and you want to be that thing, I think you have so much more control and power over your creations when you have the knowledge and experience to actually do every part of the process yourself. This is kind of an insane analogy to pull out, but it's kind of like SPSS versus R. So SPSS is this stats program which has a lot of buttons, and it's really helpful if you're trying to do big stats that are like still on the simpler side. R is a whole programming language that you can use for statistics, and it's just so much more flexible and can work with super huge numbers and big data, basically. So during undergrad, I was really thankful for having SPSS because I had buttons to guide me through the process. But during my grad degree, I had to have knowledge of R because SPSS simply wasn't flexible enough. For my non-stats friends, it's basically like the difference between HelloFresh and the grocery store. Sure, one is harder, but you can be a lot more flexible and creative. And that's why I think it's so important to do something so badly. I mean, okay, think of this. You know the craft or the skill that you've been meaning to learn, but now every time you start, it kind of feels soul-crushing because a robot can do it better than you and also in 3 seconds. Yeah, do it badly. Make the thing. Make it terrible. Make it atrocious. Make it so bad that if I looked at it, I would cry. And then be proud of it because it's all yours. I would argue that in an age where a robot has a better understanding of dialogue tags than you do, it is so human to write anyway and experiment and land on your own style and improve. I think especially in adulthood, and maybe especially for people like me who were naturally pretty good at some things and just decided to stick to the things we were good at, it feels kind of embarrassing when a 12-year-old or a robot are better at a thing than you are. But the thing to remember is that it doesn't matter. Neither the 12-year-old nor the robot are you, and neither can vote. And if it's worth doing to you, it should be worth doing badly. Because the thing is, that phase where you're experimenting and you're making terrible creations is actually so formative for you as a creative person. So I listen to this podcast where they read celebrity memoirs and discuss the book and stuff. It's called Celebrity Memoir Book Club. You should check it out if you're interested. And one of the common things that artists tend to write in their memoirs is at the time when no one really watched what they did, when they were just getting started and they kind of sucked, is one of the most creative and free time periods in their entire career. And if you think about it, it makes sense because the pure act of sticking with it despite sucking is making a choice to make a thing and realizing that an audience may or may not ever appear. That act forces you to realize that what you're doing is self-expression or art. And is that the hard part? Yes, it can be embarrassing to suck, but also to me, it's empowering because the person I'm making terrible art for is myself. And I'm just one person saying all this, but here's a fun fact that I learned in undergrad and spent 45 minutes fact checking, and I'm still kind of iffy on whether or not it's true. Expert writers tend to spend a lot of their time on revision. Why is that important? Well, to me, it's relevant because it means that even people who are experts in their craft have iterative improvement. They make something and then they spend a lot of their time making it better, which means that not only is it okay to make bad things, it's kind of an inevitable part of the creative process. It's like step 3. So step 1, think of an idea. Step 2, plan it. Step 3, make something bad. Step 4, improve it. So how can we be creative in the year of our Lord 2025? I mean, the world is on fire. Fiona Apple just released a protest song, and a lot of things are not okay. So I think step 1 is admitting that it's okay not to create right now. If you don't have it within you to make things, if you don't have the time to do things, that's okay. And if you do want to, obviously your creative process is your own and it's going to grow and change as you do. But one tip that I have found really helpful is kind of the inverse of a worry list. So a worry list is a thing that an anxiety sufferers will know what I'm talking about. It's basically a list with all of the worries that you have. You write it down, you set aside a specific time to think about that. And then thinking about those things you're worried about is supposed to be confined to that time. It gives you a sense of control over your own thought process. Now, the tip that I have is the opposite of that. It is like a thoughts and ideas list. So it's things that you want to think about when you're doing the dishes, waiting for the bus, whatever. It's like, for me, my future videos, dates with my husband, just things that I want to have on my mind. And this can kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you do have anxiety, because now you're focusing on the things that you want to think about. So you feel like you have a lot more control and hopefully like inner peace maybe. And hey, with the coming recession that everyone's talking about, you might actually have the time to be creative. But genuinely, this is the hard part because learning a craft or a skill takes time, and everyone I've spoken to lately feels busy and rushed already. My best advice is to figure out what works for you and what to prioritize. Also, improvement can take time and that's okay. You're not going to become the best miniature felt pet replica maker without a pretty big time investment, but you can probably get into the top 10. So it's just deciding that you're okay with not being the best. So when it comes to coping with AI taking over society, there are like 3 ways I feel like you can cope with it. One is to do hobbies that have no reliance on AI whatsoever. So like physical things that AI just can't make. My embroidery project is a good example of that. AI, ChatGPT can't embroider. It can't pick up a needle and do that. So that's all me. You can also do hobbies where AI could be used and just ignore it if you don't like AI. There are also arguments for including AI in your creative process. So on my last video about ChatGPT, one user left a comment comparing AI art to photography and basically how people thought of photography versus painting and drawing. And I think that might eventually become the right lens of comparison between these 2 things because they're different mediums. And I know the plural of medium is media. I'm sorry. No one would enter a photograph, no matter how beautifully composed, into a painting competition. They are completely different things. And if someone were found to have made a photorealistic painting that was actually just a picture, again, it doesn't matter how well it was shot. It's a different medium, and they'd probably be disqualified from the competition. And that, hopefully, to me, is where we're headed societally, where we recognize that like fiddling with LLMs or other generative AI to make things is quite simply a different medium, one that you have to use a different language to complement and discuss. I probably wouldn't compliment a photographer on the beauty of their subject unless they were a self-portrait artist, but I would compliment how well they captured the subject. And maybe one day we'll compliment AI pictures on, I don't know, how well the computer managed to make the rods in my eyes see colors not before known to man. Basically, I think that we should be complimenting different things in AI-generated artwork because it's a different medium. So here's my challenge for the people who didn't like my last video but are watching this video for whatever reason. If you consider yourself an AI artist, and I do mean an AI artist, not just someone playing around with AI for fun, here's my challenge. Be bad with it. Make terrible things that start stretching the medium into something different from photography or painting. Challenge the medium and prove that it is actually a medium. Make something that would be impossible to make with traditional methods, and not just because you're bad at art, but because it's actually new. Make something that makes me reach for a word to describe it, fully knowing that it's AI, but all I can land on is art. Does that sound hard? Good. It should, because that's how new, interesting things are created. So I think you guys get my point. If you want to make stuff, make bad stuff. One day you might make better stuff. Have fun with it, or don't. Just do it miserably all the time, I guess. But really, just make bad stuff. It's okay. It's part of the process, and it's an important part of the process. And if you are an AI artist, make bad stuff. Make it interesting. Improve. Find something hard and embrace it, because that's where good, moving art lives. So stay curious, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching this video. And yeah, bye guys.